أوكي، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا ما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Okay, so he says, قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله بعلمه وعلمكم آمين. He says, ولا يجوز أخذ المعيب من ذلك إلا إذا كانت معيبة كلها، وكذا الميراث. ولا يجوز أخذ الذكر إلا إذا فيما تقدم، وإلا إذا كانت كلها ذكورا. ولا أخذ الصغير إلا إذا كانت صغارا، وإذا اشترك اثنان إلى آخره. So now we have an issue, which is that we have a certain number ahead of sheep, ahead of cattle, etc., and ahead of a certain number of camels, and a certain number of camels have to be given. Okay. Now, the default is that when you give zakat, you give an animal that is healthy and normal size, right? That's the default. But so the question is, can I select my thin, skinny, sick cow to give away, right? The answer is no, you can't do that. Okay. Well, what if my cattle are all like that? All my cattle are sick, right? Um, Right. So what do I do? So say, okay, well they're all sick. I have I have 40 sick cows. Okay. I guess you can give a sick one then. What about males? It says ولا يجوز أخذ الذكر إلا فيما تقدم. Excuse me. Similarly, if they're all male, you can give a male away, right? But you only have male camels, like 500 male camels. Okay, you can give a male then. But you cannot give a sick one away unless they're all sick. You cannot give a male away unless they're all male. Right? Now, here's a question. What if 30% of them are sick? Okay, so now I'm I'm giving away a healthy one because you said I have to give a healthy one. I can't give a sick one unless they're all sick. But 30% of them are sick, right? Or 30% of them are really skinny. So 70% are fine, 30% are really skinny. Okay, so how does that work? Right? So basically what you do is you look at your net, you look at your average value, right? You look at your average value. You cannot give less than your average value. So if your average value is that of a sick animal, then you can give a sick animal, and it will be average because they are all sick. But let's say, for example, you have 100 animals and uh, 30 are sick or super skinny and 70 are fine, right? Then I'm going to say, now the average value is less than 100%. It is a 70%. So you can give a 70% animal away, but you couldn't give less than a 70% animal away. Does that make sense? So if you could imagine you had one camel that was kind of like, or one sheep that was kind of somewhere in between, right? But it has to be average or above average. It cannot be less than average. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. Similarly, they're all small, right? So you have 1,000 lambs, for example. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, your voice is just kind of breaking up
Hmm.
often.
I wonder why. I have no idea why. Um,
It seems better now, though.
okay, right. So the same thing. So we said sick. We said that has a problem with it. All young. You had 1,000 lambs, right? So ولا أخذ الصغير إلا إذا كانت صغارا. Right? They're all young. Okay. It says here فلو ملك 100 من الغنم. He has 100 sheep. ثم نتجت منها 21. And then they gave birth to another 21. وجب شاتان تجزئان أضحية. Then you have to give two sheep because when you get to 121 sheep, you have to give two. Um, so it says لكن بالقسط في القيمة. So 21 of them, you have 121, right? So you have 21 out of that, which is about a quarter, is that right? No, about a sixth. 21 is about a sixth. So a sixth are lambs, so they're not worth anything. So it says, وَلَا يُؤْخَذْ خِيَارٌ إِلَّا بِرَضَى مَالِكِهَا كَمَا مَرَّ. Right? So you would take the average, look at the average value of your sheep, and you can take something like that. Um, Okie dokie. خير. I'm not going to go into other discussions. Then he says, وَإِذَا اشْتَرَكَ اثْنَانِ فِي نِصَابٍ. He says two people both share together and they both have the zakat minimum. Okay? So together, one of them has 41 sheep, the other one has 80 sheep. Together now, together now they're going to have 121. So they're going to have to give two together. وَجَبَ عَلَيْهِمَ الزَّكَاةُ. Right? So one of them has twice as much sheep as the other. One has 41, the other one has 80. So now two sheep are due. How does it work? Uh, it doesn't mention it here in the commentary, but basically is you yeah. So imagine and then imagine. So basically, what we do is we give the two away. The two have to be given away. But let's say, for example, I took two of your sheep, then I have to pay you. Right. So basically, what happens is I have 41, you had 80. Together, 121, we have to give two sheep. So a, I have 41 121sts as a fraction of the total two, and you have 80 121sts to pay. So we put that as a fraction, and then and basically one of them is going to pay the other to make sure it's fair again. So does that make sense? So we put our sheep together, we pay zakat, and then we say, okay, together we had to pay two. What is the value of the two that we gave, and what fraction of that two was due from each of us? And we have to basically turn it into cash now, and turn that into cash, and pay each other back. Whoever's, if you took two of mine, I took one of yours, but I had a smaller fraction than you, or you had a bigger fraction than me, whatever it is, you basically compensate through paying the other person. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now, there's just an interesting point. So we said that for two reasons. We said the lambs or the offspring, the calves or the baby camels, they follow the year of their mothers. So even if you didn't have the foals or the whatever you call baby cows or the calves or the lambs or the kids, right? Baby goats or kids, then if you didn't have them uh, for the whole year, they count as having them from the whole year because the potential was there, right? Just like as we're going to see with investments, when you invest when you invest with the minimum amount of zakat, you're going to pay zakat even if you didn't have that whole amount from the beginning. You're going to pay zakat at the end on the value of the goods, not on how much you had at the beginning of the year. So that's one issue because the potential was there. That's number one. Number two, we said a condition for animals is that they are free grazing. Okay, so the idea is you just take your sheep out to this open area that nobody owns, and that's it, right? And so if you had to pay for food, then if you had to pay for food, then it wouldn't count. Say, well, hang on a minute. I have like 30 lambs here. These lambs are not eating grass yet. So is it a condition then? Why is it, or is it a condition that these lambs be free grazing? Because at the end of the day, they're actually drinking from their mothers, and it's taking away from the meat of the mothers and the general value of the mothers. So how does that work, right? So it says here, يغتفر فيه يغتفر فيه. He says, لأن النتاج تابع للأمهات. He says because the offspring merely follows تابع للأمهات, follows on from the أمهات. ويغتفر فيه ما لا يغتفر في المتبوع. And he says things are overlooked in secondary matters that are not overlooked in primary matters. Right? Who's heard that before on the Q&A? Things are overlooked in secondary matters that are not overlooked in primary matters. Can anybody remember that? So this is a qaida fiqhiyya, this is a legal principle, right? That we will we will stipulate something, but those stipulations don't necessarily apply in everything because sometimes something is secondary, right? So we say in general in your livestock they have to be free ranging, but that doesn't apply to their young because their young aren't necessarily free ranging because not necessarily possible because they might be drinking milk. Um, and so we say, oh, that's overlooked. Why is it overlooked? Because يغتفر في التابع ما لا يغتفر في المتبوع. Things are overlooked in secondary matters that are not overlooked in primary matters. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right? So that's a principle that comes up again and again and again. We gave the example. What was it? Was you? I'm. I can't. So when I'm buying gold from Badr, there has to be taqabud. I have to take it upon sight, right? So I can't possibly buy gold from him on over the phone or online. What I could do is buy a bag, have him buy a bag for me, and then I buy the gold from him verbally now, and immediately he puts it in my bag. So now it's in my bag. So that means I've taken it, right? So to begin with, Badr could not receive the gold for me. I can't say, Badr, I'm making you receive the gold for me. And he goes, okay, I hereby received it for you. You can't do that. You cannot make the seller the buyer. But suddenly I made him the buyer of a bag for me. And then I told him, put my gold in that bag. And now suddenly, there we go, done. He's delivered the gold to me immediately, even though I'm not in the same country. Does that make sense? So that's an example of something's overlooked as a secondary thing that's not overlooked as a primary thing. To begin with, you couldn't do that, right? Go ahead, Badr.
Um, so just to be clear, so in this example with the goats, which one is the primary matter and which is the
The
secondary
primary is the
matter?
mothers that you
Okay.
had, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
secondary is the kids or or the lambs or the whatever that have been born in that year. So things are
Okay.
overlooked
Mm-hmm.
for them that aren't overlooked for their mothers to begin with. The fact that
Yeah.
they're young, the fact that they're this, the fact that they're that, etc. Other examples of that, things are overlooked in the long run. Things are overlooked. Trying to think of other examples. We gave some other examples in that, but it comes up again and again and again. So there's a recurrent system. Um, Vagueness in mahar, right? Mahar is not a part of the contract. Mahar is a result of the contract. So a vagueness in the mahar is acceptable. And we can work it out afterwards. Two people got married and they didn't agree on the mahar. That's fine. Why is that okay? Because the mahar is tabi'. The mahar is just something that is a result of the contract. It's not the contract itself. So it's fine. You can work it out afterwards. And if you can't work it out, we'll go with mahar al-mithl. It's not a problem. Right? So that's because it's a tabi'. It is of the tawabi' of the results of the contract, not the contract itself. Um, there's many examples, but this is a a legal principle that comes up again and again and again. Right? Things are overlooked in secondary matters that are not overlooked in primary matters. Um, yeah. Okay. So then he says, فصل وشروط وجوب زكاة الماشية مضيع حول كامل متوال في ملكه. So what are the conditions? Number one is that a whole lunar year has passed by, right, while you own them. So if you haven't owned them for the whole lunar year, you don't pay zakat. Simple as that. Right? That's number one. Number two, إلا النتاج. Apart from nataj, sorry, not nitaj, nataj with a fatha. That's considered second. That's something different. That's the offspring. The offspring follow the mothers. That's fine. فيتبع الأمهات في الحول. They follow the same حول, the same calendar or time or clock as their mothers. Number two, وأن تكون سائمة في كلأ مباح, that they graze in uh, free open pasture, right? So there's a mas'ala before we get onto this. So here is like a trick, right? A trick in fiqh. So we're familiar with tax evasion and tax avoidance, right? So tax evasion is illegal, tax avoidance is not, right? So, you set up your company in a certain way where the company doesn't make any money or makes a very small amount of money, you know? So you change things around. You know one you know like something like Amazon, right? Amazon is like three different, four, five, or six different companies, right? Where like the delivery is one thing, and this is another thing, and then that is another thing. So they're kind of like hiring each other, and there's all these different things, right? So this is called tax avoidance. So can we do zakat avoidance, right? Can we do that? So Imam Ghazali spoke about that. So Imam Ghazali, like Ibn Taymiyyah, his role in the Ihya al-Ulumuddin, in his book, The Revival of the Religious Sciences, is to bring back the spirit of the deen. Right? That's what he's trying to do. It was Ibn Taymiyyah the same thing, trying to bring back the spirit of the deen. So there's certain things that kind of like weird, like fiqh can become really weird. So there's a trick that I'm going to do, for example. I have $1 million. I don't want to pay, or 1/40th. A 40th of $1 million is how much? $25,000? Is that right? Yeah, $25,000. I do not want to pay $25,000. Is it more than that? So 250,000. Yeah, 250,000. Yeah, $25,000. I don't want to pay $25,000 in zakat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it, wink, to Badr, and then he's going to give it back to me. So I gave the money to Badr. Here we go. And he gave it back to me. I didn't have it for the whole year, so no zakat is due, right? So there we go. So is that okay? Is that acceptable, right?
No.
So, well, technically it is, right? Because like tax avoidance. So now, the the zakat collector comes to me. I said, no, I didn't have these sheep for the whole year. I didn't have this money for the whole year. I didn't have it. So legally, then, the zakat collector cannot collect the zakat from me. right? So that's true, right? I mean, that's just how it is. Just like, for example, if you want a Muslim, you say, "Yeah, I want to marry your sister," and like, "Yeah, okay, just you did a shahada." I'm like, "Yeah." So you took the shahada to marry someone's sister, and that's it. Like, does that count in the eyes of the court? It counts, right? Does it count in Allah's eyes? No, it doesn't, right? So here in Ihya al-Ulumuddin, Imam Ghazali says, أنه لا تبرأ به ذمته من الزكاة باطنا, right? وأن هذا من الفقه المضر, right? So he said this is harmful sacred knowledge, right? Harmful sacred knowledge, right? Teaching people ways to avoid the goals of the Sharia, right? Like a trick. How could you legally abuse your wife in a technically halal way, right? There's all sorts of things you could do, right? Um, somebody, for example, he's like, "Oh man, how do you save money?" It's like, "Oh, like how is it that you save so much money?" It's like, "Oh, it's easy. I don't support my wife. Why? Oh, I just asked her to do impossible things and she says no, and so then I don't have to support her for that day, and so then, then I saves money. I don't have to pay rent and all these kind of things." So is that a goal of the Sharia? Like, is that what the Sharia is trying to get you to do? Like trying to avoid doing things that are good and not look after people, kind of things through weird, you know, loopholes and in here and there. It's not. So the loophole exists, right? You can always find a loophole in the system, but we have to understand that there's a goal in the Sharia, right? There's a goal in the Sharia. Sharia is trying to achieve something. So you have to work with the maqasid of Sharia, with the goals in mind. And so somebody who comes along and says, "Yeah, I don't want to pay zakat," so then they do these little tricks by giving it to somebody and having it taken back. It's not, this is not deen. He says on Judgment Day, Imam Ghazali says, Judgment Day, Allah's going to ask you to pay that zakat, right? And whoever taught you this as a non-talib ilm, like if they taught you that in a masjid, excuse me, then um, that's bad knowledge. That's not clever knowledge, right? So finding legal tricks around things is not a good thing to do at all, right? I just give an example of that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah with he said, for example, um, he said that when you're traveling, right, you can only shorten or join prayers if it's difficult. You can't just do it whenever you want, right? So what is Ibn Taymiyyah trying to say is the point of the deen is when things are hard, things get easy. If it's easy for you, then why are you joining, right? So we would say in the Shafi school, well, ease is not something that's mundabit, right? Ease or difficult is not something that's very measurable. So we say, are you a traveler or not? Khalas, leave it like that, right? It doesn't matter that you're traveling for no reason particularly, or some kind of not particularly amazing reason, and it's really, really easy for you to pray on time, but you just can't be bothered, right? So the point is, Ibn Taymiyyah in many of his fatwa was trying to bring back the ruh of the Sharia, bring back the spirit of the Sharia, right? Just like Imam Ghazali, right? But there's some fundamental differences between them, right? And so here, that's an example of that. You could do um, prayer avoidance. A woman, for example, doesn't want to pray, so she takes medication to create her period, right? There's all sorts of things you could do, but there's also such thing as a deen. Deen is I am genuinely want to worship Allah as opposed to I'm just here technically trying to avoid things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, the condition here then is that it has to be and takuna sa'imatan fi kala'in mubah. So number two was that they are free grazing in what an unowned pasturage, right? Places in the middle of nowhere where nobody owns anything. Okay. أو مملوكة قيمته يسيرة. Or, for example, you have to pay for it, but it's insignificant, right? So, for example, like, oh yeah, you can come and use this thing, but you just have to register, you know, $10 yearly registration fee, to take your sheep here. Okay, that's insignificant, right? He says لا يعد مثله كلفة في مقابلة نمائها. That's something nobody would consider that a significant expense, right? Something like that, right? As opposed to, no, it's a significant expense. I have to actually rent this land, I have to, in order to keep this land, I have to pay serious taxes. There's a lot of things I have to pay on this thing, right? Um, وأن يكون الصوم من مالك, and that you're the one who took the sheep out, not that the sheep went out by themselves, right? So it says فلا زكاة في معلوفة. So there's no zakat on the animals that you had to pay to feed. ولا في سائمة في كلء مملوك, right? Or you had to take the sheep out to some piece of land and had to pay for it, right?
Wait, there's no zakat on animals you have to feed?
Yeah. So it's got to be an open pasture. They just go out there and they eat the grass. But if you have to feed them, you have to buy fodder, you have to buy things, then there's no zakat that's due on them.
Okay.
Yeah. So the
So
idea is
so if you
basically
have
you're getting,
cows,
go ahead.
so if you have like cows and you buy those big stacks of like
Yeah.
grass.
Yeah. And you bought it, then
Uh-huh.
there's no zakat is due.
And is that like what if you do that for a season but not the rest of the
Yeah. So they
year?
say basically, you say, it's going to mention it in a second. So similarly, here we go. So it says, ولا في سائمة علفها المالك بنية قطع السمنة أو قدرا لا تعيش بدونه بلا ضربين كيومين ونصف, right? So you fed them, for example, for a day or so. Okay, that's small amount, right? Like if you didn't take them out to eat, it'd be fine. So you gave them a day or so of food. Yeah, one day it was really rainy. One day it was super hot. One day there was some problem. So you just kept them at home and you just fed them like that, right? So
Yeah.
that's fine. But if it's like more than that, like, oh yeah, a quarter of the year I have to buy fodder. Okay, sorry, there's no zakat is due then. Khalas. Right. Does that make
And
sense?
yeah, yeah. And
And,
I'm guessing that
similarly, work animals, they're working. So, oh, I had one of my camels carry something once. Okay, it's not a big deal. But these are camels that carry, that's all they do. I have 100 camels. They are camels that are used to carry stuff across Central Asia. That's my business. My business, I have strong Bactrian camels. They carry goods from India all the way across to Iran into Iraq. That's what they do. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There's no zakat due on them. Or you have oxen that are used for plowing, right? Or I don't know, what do you use a goat for? A goat that is used for, I don't think you use a goat, goat or a sheep for anything. But cows and camels, you can use them for work, as for work animals. So if there are work animals, there's no zakat is due on them, even if you had 1,000 of them. Does it make sense?
yeah, and I'm guessing that if you water the grass, like you own all of that land and you take care of the grass and you water it, that doesn't count. Like you still have to pay zakat, right?
It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be, uh, so here, actually mentions it, one second. So here he says قال سين ميم وسكوتهم عن الماء مشعر بأنه لا أثر له. So he says the fact that they don't talk about paying for water or watering, they just talk about food. He says mush'ir gives the sense that it's insignificant. Wallahu alam. So this is Sin Mim, this is Ibn Qasim, his hashia on the Tuhfa of Ibn Hajar. Right? So Ibn Hajar, so basically saying like the early scholars didn't say anything about water. So presumably it doesn't matter if you have to pay for the water or not. That's what
Mm,
he's saying. Wallahu alam. As opposed to, oh, I have to irrigate. So that, yeah, these animals will eat from this land, but I have to irrigate the land. That's something else. But let's say for just
yeah.
drinking, right? So then the text he says, فَلَا zakata, there is no zakat, فِيمَا سَامَتْ بِنَفْسِهَا, that for animals that just went out and grazed by themselves. You didn't graze them. أو أسامها غير المالك, or somebody else who you didn't own and you didn't give permission to, right? Or that you fed, right? وألا تكون عاملة في حرث ونحوه, that they not be work animals in plowing or the likes, right? Like carrying water, right? So both of those conditions are both of those are conditions, right? Okay, khair. So that is zakat of animals. So now it goes on to zakat and nabat. It goes on to crops. It says لا تجب إلا في الأقوات. It is only zakat is only due when it comes to main staple food. وهي من الثمار الرطب والعنب فقط. Right? And so we have it's either you are growing main staples like rice, like wheat, like barley, like oats, like lentils, okay? Or potatoes, um, or you are growing dates, you're growing dates, or you're growing grapes specifically. There is no zakat on any other type of vegetable, right? Or fruits on apples, peaches. There's no zakat on them whatsoever. Right? So it says, وَمِنَ الْحَبِّ الْحِنطَةِ وَالشَّعِيرِ وَالْأَرُزِ, right? So it's going to be on wheat and barley and rice. وسائر المقتات في حالة الاختيار, and everything that people live on in when they have a choice, i.e., if people live off something else, that that's something else. But the point is, normal people, what do people live off? What is the main staple, right? And so it's very important to understand that here, when we talk about zakat, when we talk about zakat al-fitr, when we talk about even what's the word? When we talk about monetary support of your spouse, etc., the picture that they give is that everybody lives off very, very simple means. That every single person does the following thing. They get up in the morning, they have a bowl of rice with something, and then later on in the day, they have a bowl of rice with something. That's how they live life. They do not eat anything else, right? That's it. So you're in a place, you have a piece of bread with something, and another piece of bread with something. That's it, right? So we have to put in our minds, just try and understand the the extent of the decadence that we experience, right? We live in like a ridiculously decadent society where we live like luxuries. Like you don't ask somebody, what do you live on? You know? It's like I live on different things. Yeah, we are so wealthy that we live on different things. Whereas normal everyday people, for the last approximately 10,000 years, they live off very, very simple things, right? So it is true to say that somebody like, for example, the Plains Indians, they were still living like a hunter-gatherer kind of thing. That's slightly different, right? And that was also the case in humanity before about 10,000 years ago, when there was not no stable, when there was no stable what's the word? Climate. So yes, people did not have, they did not until about 10,000 years ago, people did not have access to grains like rice and wheat and barley. And so people would have had quite a varied diet, but a very unstable and very dangerous way of living life, like a hunter-gatherer. Is very, very hard. But basically, everybody for the last 10,000 years, they grew up with their daily bread. That's what it is, right? I mean, let's think about the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread, right? That's the idea, is that you have your daily bread. Like everybody is eating bread plus something, right? Rice plus something, right? That's how it is, you know? Um, what is it? Uh, what's the Egyptian dish? It's a kushari, right? Kushari is rice with sometimes with some pasta in it and some kind of fried onions and lentils, right? That's a dish for the poor. Why is it for the dish of the poor? Because lentils are there's the meat of the poor. The average person does not eat meat. That's not a thing that people do, right? Meat is something you eat on Eid. Meat is something that you eat now and then. Meat is something you eat when you have a guest, right? If you did the math of like if you had your own farm, just think how many chickens you would have in order to eat a chicken every day, right? Like how long does it take for a chicken to grow? How many chickens does it reproduce? You're gonna have to have quite a big farm in order for you by yourself to have a chicken a day, right? Or for you to eat meat every day. So we live a life which is extremely, extremely extravagant, right? And we do different things. We have, sometimes have rice, sometimes have this, sometimes have that. Oh, you're going to be at a keto diet, like keto diet is extremely expensive, right? Because you're like, you know, imagine if you turned up at someone's house in Decca and said, "Oh, I'm on a keto diet. I can't eat that." It's like, "Well, what do you want to eat?" "I'm only going to eat, meat." Like, are you crazy, right? It's a ridiculously expensive kind of way to live, right? And so we live life that's it's very, 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 um, you know, so that these people, the way the normal life is that life is sustained on these main staple things. Every region has its fixed main staple thing. That's how people survive. And then when it's harvested, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to say, وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ. It's going to tell us, give its due on the day of harvest. You harvest this rice, go and give the rice, go and give 10% of your harvest to the poor. You've harvested this wheat, go and give 10% to the poor, etc. Right? That's just how life is. Right? Um, does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. وسائر المقتات في حالة الاختيار. Right. Okay. ونصابه خمسة أوسق وكل وسق 60 صاعا والصاع 4 أمداد والمد رطل وثلث بالبغداد. So he says, what is the bare minimum that you have to harvest in order to pay zakat? It is 5 wasaqs. What is a wasaq? A wasq is 60 sa'. What is a sa'? A sa' is 4 mud. What is a mud? It is 0.51 liters of grain. Uh, it is a volume. Okay, so you have a 0.51 liter volume of grain. You times that by 4. Okay, and now you get to about 2 liters of grain. And you times that by 60. Okay, and now you're on to 2 times 60 is
120,
120.
120. Okay, and then times that by 5 is
600.
600. So 600 liters, right? That's a volume. 600 liters. So now what you're going to do is you're going to get your wheat, you're going to put it in a big container and say, what's the volume of the wheat that you've harvested? What is the volume of the rice that you've harvested? Okay, what is the volume of the barley, of the lentils, of the, what else? Anything else that's like that. Okay. Khair. So that is that. But so you're not gonna. So if it's less than that, there's no zakat is due. So ويعتبر ذلك بالكيل تمرا أو زبيدا إن تتمر أو تزبد. Right. So we're going to look at that as its volume as tamr, as raisins or dates. We're not looking at the volume of the grapes or the volumes of the volume of the grapes or the volume of the um, the volume of the grapes, or the volume of the dates, the uncured dates, looking as a cured thing. وَإِلَّا فَرُطَبًا وَعِنَبًا. If you're not going to make them into these things, then we can look at it as raw dates and as grapes. وَيُعْتَبُرُ الْحَبُّ مُصَفًّا مِنَ التِّبْنِ. Right? And when we say the volume, we don't mean every single thing you cut off the ground, because not everything is eaten. We're going to say we're looking at the remove the chaff and remove the stalk, and that's whatever is stored and eaten. Okay. Now it's important to understand that today, when you go and buy rice, it is or wheat, it is not going. There's a certain covering that is originally part of it. Okay, so like there's certain amount that you don't actually take off. You actually, when it's stored, that's kept with it. So what that means now is when you go and buy a bag of rice, that's actually going to be, and if you got a bag of rice that is actually and you filled up, for example, 600 liters of that, that is actually going to be much more than that's going to be how does it work out? Like you've taken things off the rice that are actually counted in that volume, if that makes sense, right? So it doesn't really mention it here, but they mention that there's a certain that traditionally that how things usually worked is there's a certain covering on the rice or on the wheat that is actually part of what you eat, of what is kept. And today, when we buy it and sell it, it's not like that. And so that's actually part of what is going to be measured. Okay, so if somebody who is in this field, or they actually have to pay zakat in this way, they should do a bit more research, because it's not so simple. So it says وأما يدخر في قشره الذي لا يؤكل معه وهو الأرز. Right? So he says, so basically it is the qishr, it is the cover that it is kept in. So if you were to store it and you kept it in that, then that's gonna be considered. If it's not, then you don't consider it, right? So we actually have to kind of be a bit familiar with these things. So here it says, for example, al-qishr al-hamra min al-ruz yukammal khams awsaq biha. So it says the skin, the red skin that's over this rice. I don't know what he means by this red skin. I'm not a farmer. This part of the rice. Okay. So it is not just the rice that you actually eat. It is part of that is what you would store it with. Okay. So anyway, just take note of that for somebody who's going to be a farmer or whatever. It says, وَلَا يُكَمَّلُ جِنْسٌ بِجِنْس. What if you had a field and you had rice and wheat, right? Yeah, this little experiment, you did some wheat here and some rice here and some barley here. If you don't have enough, if you have, let's say, nearly enough wheat to pay zakat, and nearly enough barley, and nearly enough rice, you don't pay anything. Right? وَتُضَمُّ الْأَنْوَاعُ بَعْضُهَا إِلَى بَعْض. But different types of wheat you put together. He says, وَلَعَلَسُ إِلَى الْحِنْطَةِ. He says, alas, I don't know what this is, but it's actually a type of wheat. It's very different, but it's actually a type of wheat. So if you had wheat and alas, they are both considered wheat, because they are considered one thing. Okay. وَيُخْرِجُ مِنْ كُلٍّ بِقِسْطِهِ إِنْ سَهُلَ. Right? If you have some alas, let's say, and some wheat, and they are both, you're going to give zakat on both of them, then you're going to do it based on the fraction. You had a quarter of your field was alas and 3/4 was hanta. So now you're going to give zakat on a quarter of this and 3/4 of that. In sahwala, if it's easy. وَإِلَّا أُخْرِجَ مِنَ الْوَسَطِ. You just go for an approximation. He says, وَلَا يُضَمُّ ثَمَرُ عَامٍ إِلَى ثَمَرِ عَامٍ آخَرٍ. What if this year you had 500 wasaqs, right? And next year you had 500 wasaqs. Do they complete one another? No, they do not. Right? Similarly with zara'. You don't do that. From one year to the other, you don't do that. وَيُضَمُّ ثَمَرُ الْعَامِ وَزَرْعُهُ بَعْضُهُ إِلَى بَعْضٍ. Right? But in one year, you harvested twice, yes, you will add that up, right? So this rice and that rice adds up. This wheat and that wheat adds up. If, for example, I don't think we do that with wheat. So I don't know which of these things you'd ever harvest twice a year. But anyway, um, anything that's done twice a year, you would add it up. Shall everyone's following?
Yes.
Okay. He says فصل وواجب ما شرب بغير مؤنة العشر وما سقي بمؤنة كالنواضح. So he says, as for something that you did not irrigate, right? You live in a place like Southeast Asia where I am, and you had paddy fields in a certain area where just rained regularly, and you did the work to do work on the paddy fields, and that's it. You did not get water for the rice. It just rained sufficiently. That's it. خلاص. So you're going to have to give now a tenth, not 1/40th, a tenth of your crop, a tenth of the harvest is going to be given away. وما سقي بمؤنة كالنواضح نصفه, right? And he says, well, if you had to pay for the water, or you had to hire camels or cows to come and bring it, or you had to put in some kind of pump or whatever it is, and you're paying for the electricity, these kind of things, then you are. Now, what if you had to, similarly this year, you had to pay workers to come and dig ditches. Okay, but next year, does that count? No, it does not count. Okay. So in the first year of you digging ditches and making sure that the waterways can reach it, that will mean you did significant work, so you're going to only have to give a 20th and not a 10th. But the next year that it's there and it just works by itself, right? Then that's not that you still have to give a 10th. Okay, so basically it's a 10th if you don't have to pay for the water. It's a 20th if you have to pay for the water, right? But it's still more than a 40th, right? It's not still a 20th, right? So 5% of your crops. He says, وَمَا سُقِيَ بِهِمَا سَوَاءً أَوْ أَشْكَلَ ثَلَاثَةُ أَرْبَاعٍ وَإِلَّا فَقِسْطُهُ وَلَا تَجِبُ إِلَّا بِدُوَ الصَّلَاحِ فِي الثَّمَرِ, right? So he says, what if it was I had to do one month of the year, or 3 months of the year I had to pay for water, then a fraction, right? We're gonna work out a fraction. Okay, go ahead, Badr.
This is all for rice and what other crops? Is it for all crops or?
All main staple foods. So
Okay, so yeah.
potatoes, wheat, barley, yeah, rice. So it sounds like, Badr, you're really gonna go for this. You're gonna go for this farming thing in Panama.
Maybe, inshallah.
So you have a lot of questions about these things. Okay, so anyway, so if you imagine it was 3 months of the year, right? So then it's going to be, how would you work that out? So let's make it easier. 6 months of the year. 6 months of the year, I pay for water, and 6 months of the year it just rains. So we're going to say 7.5, right? So halfway between 10% and 5% is 7.5. Okay, what if it was 3 months of the year? Okay, 8.75, right? Or 6.25. Right? You just do a fraction, right? A fraction of that of the difference, right? And just work it out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Everyone else is following? Mahmoud?
Yes, Sheikh.
Muhammad, Shaman, Donat, Shazia. Okay. Khair. So he says, and then he says, فَقِسْتُهُ وَلَا تَجِبُ إِلَّا بِبُدُوِ الصَّلَاحِ فِي الثَّمَرِ, right? So with our cattle, we're going to say, did you have them for a whole year? Yes or no? If you did not have them for a whole year, then no zakat is due. The zakat does not become binding, right? Unless it was a whole year, right? Now with the crops, it doesn't have to be a whole year. They just have to become the harvest has to come in. What does that mean? Do I actually have to physically harvest? No. It says they have to become ripe. So that this rice is now ready to be harvested. As soon as it becomes ready to be harvested, now the obligation is binding on you to pay zakat, right? So now what happens is now the poor have a right of that property, okay? Of each they have now of each grain they have a 5 or 10%, okay? At that point, before that they don't own anything, but now they have a share of your crops. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. He says, وَاشْتِدَادُ الْحَبِّ فِي الزَّرْعِ, right? And that the grain becomes hard. وَالسُنَّةُ خَرْصُ الثَّمَرِ عَلَى مَالِكِهِ. Okay, so now I'm in a situation, okay? I'm in a situation where I have these paddy fields that I own here in Malaysia, okay? And now it's time, the harvest is time, harvest time, and the poor they own a 5% or 10%, let's say 10% is raining enough, 10% of every single grain of rice that's in my paddy fields, in my farms, okay? So I don't really want that because it's kind of annoying, right? So what I do is I go to the government and I say, listen, government, I would like you to send an official to come and assess my paddy fields and judge how much I have to pay. So they come and they say, oh, our experts have judged, you've looked at this, da 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 da. They think your total harvest is going to be X and you're going to have to pay Y. So I say, fine, here's why. I go and buy a bunch of rice and I give it to them. So now what's happened is the poor used to have a fraction of every single grain in my fields. Now I've just moved that out. So now I've shifted that liability. Now it's all mine. So I've basically, they just said this is what it is. This is how much you owe, and now you can pay that from here, or you can pay that by buying some rice and giving that away in another way, right? Does that make sense? So basically, I'm not liable to them anymore. It's like this. Like I have a house in New York, and Badr has 5% of it. I don't want that. Like I just want to have it myself. So I say, Badr, hey, can I buy it from you? Can I do this? Can I do that? Right? I basically, does that make sense? Like I just want to be free of any problems. Right?
And Sheikh, if what's produced is greater than the estimate, do you pay the difference?
Presumably, yeah.
Do you get the
Yeah, presumably. Let's have a look here. Um, oh, interestingly, one second. So he says for thamar, you do that for fruits. So he said here, وخرج بالثمر الحب لتعذر الحزر فيه. You can't guess it. You can't estimate it. So apparently you can't do that. Apparently it doesn't. You can't do that. Apparently with grains, you can only do that with dates and grapes. Allahu alam. But let's say dates and grapes. Okay. So I said I want to basically do what I want with these. How does this work? Excuse me. Hmm. Yeah. One second. I can't see that. I'm not sure. So the default is basically you're not liable. Is that's what you're trying to do is basically make somebody else liable for it. Like you've done it now. The government has done it, or even you could say you could appoint two trustworthy people to do it, and then they're responsible for any mistakes, basically. That's the basic picture. Allahu alam. So here it says fi thamar. Where is it? You can only do that in grapes and dates. You can't do the khars. You can't do the estimation in grain. Wallahu alam. I'm sure there's a position that you can do that in the school, but he says here, وَخَرَجَ بِالثَّمَرِ الْحَبْ لِتَعَذُّرِ الْحَذْرِ فِيهِ. You cannot estimate it, right? Hazr doesn't mean guessing, it means estimating here. Okay, and and he says, وَالشَّرْطُ الْخَارِسِ أَن يَكُونَ ذَكَرًا مُسْلِمًا, that he be a male. So this is he's like being a kind of a judge, if that makes sense, right? So he has to be male, he has to be Muslim, free, he has to be upright, and he has to know, right? He has to have experience in the field. فيضمن المالك الواجب في ذمته, and it shifts now. The liability shifts from the grains in the grapes and dates in front of him to his dhimma. It's now what he owes, right? That's how much he owes now. ويقبل, and he accepts. ثم يتصرف في جميع ثمن. Now he can do what he wants. He can burn the whole thing down. He can sell it all. He can do whatever he wants. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, there's a whole discussion here. Okay, mention that. So it says, وأما and the Hashia says, ولو تلف المخروص قبل التمكن من أداء زكاة فلا زكاة على المالك. أو تلف بعضه زكى الباقي ولو دون نصاب. 1 second. Okay, I'm not going to go into this. There's another the discussion. We'll do that inshallah later on. We're going to do okay, great. Okay, so then he goes on to zakat of naqd. Naqd means cash, right? Naqdan, right? Naqdan, dafa'tu naqdan means I paid in cash, mean I did the opposite of debt, right? So that's what we mean by it, right? And in the word of English, cash is in the word in the French caché, which means to hide, right? A cache of letters means some letters that you found in hiding, right? So in English, the word cash means what? You pay in cash, meaning not in credit, right? And notice how even in English, when you like just in finance, the world of finance, the difference between paying with your debit card, right, versus paying in cash. Like, is there a difference? The answer is yes, right? There's certain things like you're gonna go and do what's it called? A check. What's it called? The check. You go to 7-Eleven, you need what's it called? They're gonna do a check for you. What's it called? There's a type of check that they do for you. Like if you don't have a bank account and you need to do a check, you'll go there and you can't do that with a debit card. You have to do that in cash. You actually have to physically give them cash and then they're going to write a check for you, right? There's a certain word for it. I can't remember what it's called. Here in Malaysia, there's certain things like there'll be certain like they have a 7-Eleven here, and so like 7-Eleven will do certain things, but only in cash. So there is a significant difference in the business world between having hard cash as opposed to a transfer of something. It's not really the same, right? And so here, this is what we're talking about is pieces of gold and silver. That's the default meaning of naqd, right? Right. Is to pay in cash, meaning I have it, a physical thing right here. And the opposite is then a debt, to pay in debt, or to pay in dhimma, I owe it to you. Okay? So that's what inshallah we'll talk about next week. خير. Any questions or queries? Okay, shall I stop here? وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Okay.